Karen smashes store printer with her purse after coupon fails to scan. The local department store hummed with activity. Parents pushed loaded carts filled with school supplies and last-minute essentials. College students hovered near the electronics section looking for deals, and bored kids played with the motorized carts until a nearby employee shooed them off. Among this typical crowd strolled Karen, a woman in her late 40s, her platinum bob cut styled into a helmet of hairspray perfection, oversized sunglasses perched dramatically on her nose despite being indoors. Her purse, a massive faux leather tote covered in decorative zippers and rhinestones, swung with every step like a warning bell. In one hand, she clutched a crumpled paper coupon as if it were a golden ticket, and in the other, her phone sat on speaker mode as she jabbered away loudly about her Pilates class being canceled last minute. She drew eyes not because of her elegance or charm, but because of the unfiltered way she moved through the store like she owned it. Karen beelined for the self-checkout lane, where 5 kiosks stood glowing with patient readiness. The lines moved swiftly, each customer scanning and bagging their items with quiet efficiency. Karen, however, moved past the line entirely, ignoring the stares of those waiting their turn. She cut directly in front of a teenage girl trying to pay for a few makeup items, muttering something about being in a rush and needing to get home before the traffic starts. The girl looked too startled to speak, and Karen didn't acknowledge her presence as she slammed her items onto the kiosk platform. Fabric softener, a couple of candles, and an unnecessary amount of air fresheners in aggressively floral scents. Karen pressed the buttons with the impatience of someone expecting a fight. The machine, polite and robotic, scanned each item and totaled her purchase. When the moment came to scan her coupon, Karen smirked. She took the paper, now bent at the corners and faint from weeks of being in her bag, and held it up to the coupon scanner. The red light blinked. She angled the coupon again, carefully this time. Beep. Red light. She pressed it down harder against the glass. Beep. Still nothing. Her smirk faded. She looked around, squinting as if the store lighting had betrayed her. She tried again. Still nothing. Karen drew in a sharp breath and planted her feet firmly apart. With theatrical irritation, she turned toward the nearby employee, Marcus, who had been assisting another customer but had clearly seen the whole thing unfold. He was no older than 18, tall and lanky with an easygoing demeanor and a nervous energy that clung to his every movement. His red vest was slightly wrinkled, his name tag hanging crooked, but he had a friendly face and clearly tried his best to handle the chaos with grace. "You there?" Karen snapped, waving the coupon in the air as though commanding attention in a courtroom. "This machine won't scan my coupon." Marcus turned from his current task, offered a polite smile, and took a few steps toward her. "Hi, ma'am. Sorry about that. Let me take a look." Karen handed over the coupon like she was offering evidence in a criminal trial. Marcus examined it, glancing at the fine print. His brow furrowed slightly. "Looks like this expired last week." Karen's face froze. "Excuse me." "The coupon," Marcus repeated gently, holding it out to her. "It says it expired on the 7th. Karen didn't take it back, and Marcus blinked. "Well, expired coupons don't go through the system. There's no manual override on the self-checkouts for them." Karen snatched the coupon back. "Then override it at the register. You work here, don't you?" "I do, ma'am," Marcus said, standing a little straighter. "But I can't override something that's not valid anymore. I'm really sorry." Karen leaned in, her voice dropping to that icy, deadly whisper people instinctively fear. "I'm not asking if it's valid. I'm asking you to do your job." Marcus opened his mouth, hesitated, then gestured toward the walkie-talkie clipped to his vest. "I can call my supervisor for you if you'd like." Karen threw her hands up. "Unbelievable. You know what this is? Corporate laziness. Robots replacing humans, and now the humans that are left can't do anything without checking with someone else. Back in my day, we had customer service. We had managers who actually managed things, not teenagers pretending they've got authority." Her voice was rising, drawing attention. The girl she had cut in front of had backed away, and a few customers had paused to watch. Karen didn't seem to notice or care. She continued, packing in front of the machine as if she were building steam. "What are you even getting paid for, huh? If the system doesn't work, fix it. Override it. Use your brain. God forbid someone get 50 cents off their purchase without having to sacrifice their dignity." Marcus remained professional, though his eyes darted nervously to the growing crowd. "I'll get Vanessa. She's the floor supervisor." "You do that," Karen spat. "And tell her I want her name, her district manager's name, and the corporate complaint line. You people think you can push paying customers around. Think again." Marcus radioed Vanessa while Karen stood with arms crossed, glowering at the self-checkout machine like it had insulted her personally. A soft ding on the speaker announced her transaction had been canceled due to inactivity. Karen ignored it. Vanessa arrived within a minute, short, composed, and clearly accustomed to handling confrontations like this. She greeted Karen with a calm smile. "Hi, I'm Vanessa. I understand there's an issue with your coupon." Karen launched into a dramatic retelling, emphasizing how rude and unhelpful Marcus had been, and how all she wanted was for someone to scan her coupon and give her the discount. Vanessa listened patiently, then asked to see the coupon. One glance confirmed what Marcus had already said. "Unfortunately, ma'am, this coupon expired last week. Our system doesn't accept expired promotions, and we can't override them." Karen narrowed her eyes. "So what you're saying is, you won't help me?" "What I'm saying is, we can't process expired coupons," Vanessa replied steadily. Karen shook her head in disbelief. "This is unreal, just wow. I've never been treated this way in my life. You know what? You people don't deserve my money. You don't deserve customers like me." Vanessa held her ground. "I'm sorry you feel that way." Karen stepped back from the counter and stared at the machine, breathing heavily, her knuckles white around her purse strap. The tension in the air was palpable. The crowd around them had grown, some watching from behind racks of clothes, others pretending to browse nearby shelves. A teenager pulled out their phone discreetly, hitting record. Karen looked down at the self-checkout screen, then at her crumpled coupon. She raised her chin, lips pursed. "If the system's broken, I'll fix it myself." No one quite knew what she meant, at least not yet, but they were about to find out. Karen stood rigid in front of the self-checkout machine, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts as if she had just finished running a mile, though all she had done was argue herself into a wall of logic that would not bend to her will. Her eyes, previously shielded by large sunglasses, now perched on top of her head like a crooked crown, darted between the cracked coupon in her hand and the machine's indifferent screen that continued flashing its polite but unyielding error message. Around her, the world remained in motion, customers moving on with their day, whispers spreading like wildfire, and phones discreetly raised by those who saw in Karen's rising fury an opportunity for digital entertainment. Yet, Karen existed in her own storm, utterly convinced that she was the only sane person in a store full of sheep bowing to what she believed was a cold, corporate machine trying to cheat her out of a righteous discount. Her expression twisted with righteous indignation, a look that declared to everyone within earshot that they were the problem, not her. Vanessa, still standing at a calm but professional distance, folded her hands politely and offered one final attempt to steer the encounter back toward reason. "If there's anything else I can assist you with that's within policy, I'd be happy to." But that's as far as she got before Karen cut her off with a hand raised like she was commanding a courtroom. "No, you've done enough. You've made it clear you're not going to help me. You'd rather protect a broken system than do your job. Don't worry, I'll make this go viral. I have followers, you know. People listen when I speak." As if to reinforce the point, Karen pulled her phone from her purse, opened the camera app and spun around to face it, recording herself in selfie mode while pointing dramatically to the checkout screen. "This is what we're dealing with, people. A machine that doesn't work, a coupon that's perfectly valid except for some arbitrary date, and staff that refuse to assist. Corporate America, everybody. Marcus shifted awkwardly near the end of the counter, clearly hoping that filming herself might be enough of a distraction for her to leave peacefully. But Karen wasn't done, not even close. She ended the recording, gave herself a smug nod of approval after watching a few seconds of playback, and then turned to the self-checkout again as if staring down a sworn enemy. The machine, for its part, continued blinking its same error, entirely unaffected by Karen's presence or outrage. Then, without a word, Karen lifted her handbag in one hand and gripped it tightly like a hammer about to strike. Her jaw clenched, her eyes wide with fury, and with a single guttural scream of frustration, she brought the full weight of her purse crashing down on the printer's section of the self-checkout. The sound echoed across the department store like a gunshot, metal and plastic colliding with force, followed by the soft but unmistakable crunch of internal components cracking under pressure. Startled gasps erupted from nearby customers, and Marcus instinctively stepped backward, his hands raised slightly in shock. Vanessa's composure wavered for the first time, her mouth parting as she tried to process whether she had just witnessed a customer committing actual property damage in real time. Karen, breathing hard, looked around proudly and shouted, "That's how you fix it." The machine, of course, was not fixed. Its display flickered once, then went dark, and a small wisp of smoke curled from the top of the receipt printer. Karen stepped back triumphantly, as if expecting applause or some kind of medal for her defiance. But instead, she was met with silence, a stunned, heavy silence broken only by the distant sound of a register beeping and a baby beginning to cry somewhere in the next aisle. Vanessa quickly stepped forward, motioning to Marcus with a silent glance that said, "Get security now." Marcus didn't hesitate. He pressed the alert button on his walkie-talkie and began explaining the situation in hushed urgency. Karen, sensing the shifting mood, seemed to double down, mistaking the stunned silence of the crowd for fear rather than disgust. "You all saw that," she said, turning to the gathering of customers. "That machine was defective. I was trying to get help. They refused. I did what needed to be done. I shouldn't have to fight this hard for a discount. We have rights." Several people rolled their eyes and a few even shook their heads. One woman muttered under her breath, "Lady, it was 50 cents. But Karen heard it. She spun toward the voice, eyes blazing. "It's not about the amount, it's about the principle. If we let this slide, what's next? They'll just start stealing from us openly." At that moment, James, the store's lead security guard, approached from the front entrance. He was in his late 30s, built like a linebacker but with the calm and practiced tone of someone who'd seen one too many store tantrums. He stopped a few feet from Karen, hands out and palms open in a peaceful gesture. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "we're going to need you to step aside and come with me, please." Karen gave a bitter laugh. "Oh, now we're involving security. I'm the victim here. That machine was broken, your employees were useless, and now I'm being punished for trying to shop." James didn't flinch. "Ma'am, you damaged store property. I need to ask you to come with me so we can sort this out quietly." Karen's face flushed red. "I'm not going anywhere. I have rights. And unless you plan to drag me out of here in handcuffs, I suggest you back off." The situation was escalating fast. Shoppers began to edge away, giving the confrontation space as phones recorded from safer distances. Marcus had returned to Vanessa's side, and the two exchanged a look of shared dread. They both knew how this would end. James took a step closer, firmer now. "Ma'am, last warning. Either you walk with me peacefully or we call the authorities." Karen's pride clashed with the sudden realization that she might not be able to shout her way out of this one. Her eyes darted around as if seeking a sympathetic face in the crowd, but no one offered her support. She was isolated, surrounded by passive observers and recording cameras, every one of them capturing her meltdown for the internet to judge. Yet still, her ego refused to let her surrender. She jutted out her chin, crossed her arms, and declared, "Fine, let them come. Let the whole world see how this store treats its customers." James exhaled and pulled out his phone, stepping aside to call the police. Karen stood her ground, convinced that somehow she would come out of this looking like a hero. But the truth was, the damage was already done, and not just to the printer. The court of public opinion had already begun its trial, and the jury was watching with wide, incredulous eyes, waiting to see how far she would go. Karen stood with defiant arrogance near the shattered self-checkout machine, her arms crossed and her chin lifted, as if she were defending some sacred principle, instead of the violent temper tantrum that had led to the destruction of store property. Around her, murmurs flowed like low tides through the clusters of onlookers, many of whom still held up their phones, recording every second of the madness like they were documenting history in the making. The store had grown noticeably quieter, the jovial bustle of a Saturday afternoon completely replaced with tension, curiosity, and the unmistakable undertone of discomfort. Employees near the electronics section whispered to each other, cashiers exchanged glances, and a few shoppers abandoned their carts altogether to avoid being caught in the whirlwind unfolding at the front of the store. Karen, meanwhile, stood in the eye of it all, completely convinced she was the righteous protagonist in some battle against injustice, completely unaware, or unwilling to accept, that to everyone else, she looked like the living embodiment of entitlement gone feral. James, the security guard, hung up the phone after confirming police dispatch and returned to Karen's side, his voice low and steady, but carrying the kind of weight that only comes from experience dealing with people who think rules bend to their will. He informed her that law enforcement was on the way, and that, for her own sake, it would be best to wait quietly and not escalate things further. Karen scoffed at the suggestion, flipping her hair back and barking something about how she'd sue for emotional damages, and how this store would be lucky if it survived the week once corporate saw the footage. James didn't bother responding. He simply stood guard, his presence silent but authoritative, as Karen continued her one-woman revolution. Vanessa had quietly retreated behind the customer service counter, whispering with a colleague about what forms needed to be filled out, how much damage the machine had sustained, and whether or not any footage from the overhead cameras would be needed for the incident report. Marcus, still rattled, sat on a stool in the corner with a bottle of water, his leg bouncing nervously while he relived the event over and over in his mind. The initial sting of being called useless had faded, replaced by a growing mix of relief that he hadn't been the direct target of Karen's rage, and a sick fascination with how far she was willing to go over a coupon that was worth less than $1. A few of the younger employees huddled near him, whispering jokes that cut the tension, half in disbelief, half in awe that this level of meltdown was even possible in real life. Karen, on the other hand, had begun packing, her voice carried across the front of the store as she launched into yet another rant, this time aimed at the customers watching her. "What's wrong with all of you?" she shouted. "You're just standing there, filming like I'm the problem. Well, guess what? You'll thank me when these machines are gone and real people have their jobs back. You'll thank me when corporate starts listening to customers again instead of hiding behind robots and kids with radios." She gestured wildly to the broken printer as if it were a trophy, her voice rising higher with each sentence until it bordered on shrieking. Some people had stopped filming and simply walked away, embarrassed for her, while others kept recording silently, realizing that no one would believe this story without proof. As the automatic doors at the front of the store slid open with a soft chime, 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside, their eyes immediately scanning the area before locking onto James, who nodded toward Karen. The lead officer, a calm woman in her late 30s with a notebook already in hand, approached slowly, speaking in a tone that was authoritative but not aggressive. "Ma'am," she began, "we've been called about an incident involving property damage. Can you step over here and talk to us?" Karen looked at her as if insulted. "Are you seriously asking me questions? You should be asking them. I'm the one who was denied service, harassed by teenage employees and disrespected at every turn. I had a valid coupon and the system wouldn't accept it. They refused to help, and when I tried to fix it, now I'm the criminal." The officer remained unfazed, her tone steady. "We're not accusing anyone yet, ma'am. We're here to gather facts, but the staff here reported you struck a self-checkout machine repeatedly with your bag, causing damage." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically, arms thrown up. "This is ridiculous. Do you know how much money I've spent in this store over the years? I practically fund their operations, and now I'm being treated like some common vandal." Her eyes flicked toward the onlookers, clearly hoping for a nod of support, a murmured agreement, a single sympathetic voice to validate her outburst, but none came. In fact, most people were actively trying not to make eye contact with her, too aware of the cameras still rolling, too repelled by the escalating absurdity of it all. The second officer, younger but equally composed, approached James to verify details while the lead continued calmly asking Karen for identification. Karen, still resisting cooperation, barked, "Why do you even need my ID? I didn't do anything wrong. The machine was already broken." Her voice was losing its edge now, tinged with desperation, and as she hesitated, the reality of the situation finally began to seep through her wall of denial. She was no longer in control. The stares weren't admiring, the silence wasn't supportive, and the footage being captured wasn't going to crown her as some viral justice warrior. It would paint her as exactly what she looked like: a woman who had completely unraveled in a public space over a 50-cent coupon. After a long pause, Karen reached into her purse and handed over her ID, muttering something about calling her lawyer and not saying another word without representation. The officers nodded, took down her information, and asked her to accompany them outside to continue the conversation privately. Karen protested again, not as loudly this time, but eventually agreed, realizing resistance might only make things worse. She straightened her clothes, readjusted her sunglasses over her eyes like armor, and walked stiffly between the officers. The crowd parted for her exit, a sea of judgmental faces, some still recording, some just stunned into silence. As the automatic doors closed behind her, a few customers let out breathless laughs, and the store seemed to breathe again. James stayed behind to give his statement. Vanessa emerged from behind the counter with a clipboard and walked over to Marcus, who had finally stopped bouncing his leg. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded, chuckling nervously. "Yeah, I think so. That was something." Vanessa handed him the clipboard and smiled faintly. "Welcome to retail." They both turned toward the dead self-checkout, where a maintenance tech had already been called and someone had taped a handwritten sign across the broken printer. It read, "Temporarily out of order. Please do not repair with purse." The staff snickered, and for the first time all day, the tension in the air began to lift. Outside the department store, the late afternoon sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot and bathing the asphalt in a warm, orange glow. Karen stood stiffly near the edge of the sidewalk, her purse slung over one shoulder like a weight she now regretted carrying. The two officers who had escorted her out maintained a respectful but firm distance, one jotting down notes while the other calmly asked questions about the incident inside. Karen's tone had shifted, less aggressive now, more self-pitying, coated in indignation rather than fire. She clung to her narrative like a raft in stormy waters, repeating how she had been mistreated, how the staff refused to help her, and how the machine was faulty from the beginning. She tried to sprinkle in buzzwords like harassment, corporate negligence, and consumer rights, hoping they would lend some weight to her argument, but neither officer reacted the way she wanted them to. Their expressions were neutral, professional, and far from sympathetic. They had heard it all before. Karen's composure began to crack as she noticed the growing number of passers-by drifting past the automatic doors and glancing her way with unmistakable recognition. Whispers passed between strangers. A child pointed and whispered to his mother, who quickly pulled him along. Somewhere, someone honked their horn. A group of teens across the lot were watching a video on their phone, laughing and gasping in disbelief. Karen could just barely hear her own voice blaring through the tiny speakers, shouting, "That's how you fix it," before the sound of her purse slamming into the checkout printer echoed faintly through the clip. Her stomach sank. The video was already circulating. She felt it like a shiver through her spine. She had become that woman. The one people mocked in comment sections, the one strangers dissected in reaction videos. It wasn't just the store anymore. It was the entire internet. Back inside, the store's atmosphere had changed. The broken kiosk remained cordoned off with bright yellow tape, and the sign scrawled in marker, "Do not repair with purse," had taken on a kind of mythic quality. Employees snapped photos of it to share in group chats, while customers took selfies near it and chuckled before returning to their shopping. Vanessa moved briskly between departments, checking in on her staff, ensuring everything had returned to order. She paused briefly at the customer service desk to debrief with her manager over the radio, then headed back toward the self-checkouts where Marcus was once again stationed, albeit with a different machine. He was more relaxed now, cracking jokes with a middle-aged couple who had asked him what happened earlier. "Long story," he said with a grin, "but let's just say someone didn't appreciate our discount policy." Elsewhere in the store, employees exchanged stories from their vantage points. In the break room, a few had already started a makeshift betting pool on how long it would take before the incident ended up on national news or got remixed into a meme. One of the younger staff members was already working on a TikTok parody skit, complete with dramatic reenactments and exaggerated Karen impressions. Laughter rang out with each retelling of the moment Karen screamed about robots stealing jobs, or declared the broken machine a symbol of tyranny. For a place usually plagued with monotony and quiet frustrations, the whole ordeal had injected a weird kind of energy into the team. Bonded by the ridiculousness of it all, the employees shared a rare feeling of unity, as if they'd all survived some strange, viral moment together. Back outside, Karen was beginning to fray. Her voice trembled as she tried to explain how the coupon wasn't really expired, and that she had read somewhere that stores were supposed to honor manufacturer discounts for a few days after the printed date. She accused the machine of being rigged, said she suspected it had been deliberately programmed to reject her, and went on a tangent about how the self-checkout was a flawed and dystopian concept. The officers listened patiently, writing down her statements without judgment, but it was clear they weren't buying her version of events. When they finally informed her that she would not be arrested, Karen brightened briefly, until they added that she would be receiving a citation for property damage and would be formally trespassed from the store for an indefinite period. That meant she was banned from returning, and if she did, she could be arrested for criminal trespass. Karen's mouth opened in shock. "You're banning me." "But I've been shopping here for years. I have the credit card. I get the circulars every week." The officers remained firm. "Ma'am, store management has requested that you not return. That's their right. They've documented the incident and shared footage, and we're just here to enforce that decision." Karen protested loudly, claiming that she was the one owed an apology and threatening lawsuits again, but her voice rang hollow even to herself. She felt it in her bones now, that creeping, inevitable sensation that she had taken it too far and there was no easy way to undo it. No sudden twist of logic could recast her as the hero. The tide had turned, and she was alone against it. After the officers finished, Karen was left standing near her SUV, humiliated and shaking with anger she could no longer direct at anyone. She climbed into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel as though it might anchor her in place. Her phone buzzed repeatedly in her purse, notifications flooding in from friends, relatives, and a growing number of strangers. She opened one message. It was from her cousin in another state. It simply read, "Is this really you in the video?" and included a link to a clip titled "Karen Destroys Checkout Machine Over 50-Cent Coupon," with a thumbnail of her mid-yell, mouth wide, purse mid-swing. Karen's stomach twisted. She closed the message, started her car, and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Her jaw was tight, her fingers trembling slightly, but she said nothing as she drove, the only sound in the vehicle coming from her blinker ticking like a metronome of regret. Meanwhile, inside the store, the staff carried on. Vanessa reviewed paperwork, Marcus trained a new hire on how to politely say no to impossible demands, and a line of customers formed again at the self-checkouts, some smiling knowingly, others still buzzing from the earlier scene. The store wasn't broken. The staff wasn't rattled. The machine still beeped, scanned, and printed without complaint. Life went on just as it always did. And though her presence had caused a momentary stir, Karen was now just another story. Another cautionary tale told in retail breakrooms. Another meme bouncing across the internet. Another example of what happens when entitlement meets reality and loses. The following morning, the department store opened its glass doors as usual, bathed in soft golden light from the rising sun, welcoming early bird shoppers and sleepy-eyed employees alike. It had been less than 24 hours since the incident, yet the store already felt like it was recovering from some bizarre, surreal fever dream. The shattered self-checkout printer had been removed overnight and replaced with a brand new unit, sleek, untouched, and humming softly with readiness. A laminated sign had been added, not by corporate but by the employees themselves, reading, "Please be kind to the machines, they're just doing their jobs." Above it, someone had taped a blurry printout of a still from the viral video, Karen's arm mid-swing, her purse frozen in motion, her face contorted in righteous fury. Someone had added a cartoon speech bubble to the photo. "That's how you fix it." Staff snorted every time they passed it. Management didn't remove it. Everyone agreed they'd earned the laugh. Inside the break room, the morning crew filtered in with their coffee cups, exchanging sleepy greetings and biting back grins as they recounted their favorite comments from the viral video. One employee read aloud from a Reddit thread, where internet users had begun debating whether Karen's purse should be considered a weapon. Another shared a TikTok duet, where a user dressed in full Karen costume recreated the meltdown using a grocery bag filled with bricks. Even Marcus, who had initially been rattled by the whole ordeal, now chuckled as he scrolled through memes on his phone, one of which showed Karen as a video game boss. Final form, Coupon Crusader. The one-stent's aftermath had transformed into a communal comedy hour, a kind of shared catharsis through humor and disbelief. The absurdity had united them. Vanessa entered the break room with a clipboard in one hand and a pastry in the other, offering a quick briefing before everyone clocked in. She reminded them to stay professional, not to engage with customers about the incident, and to direct all questions to management. But even she cracked a smile when someone asked if the store should start offering emotional hazard pay for retail trauma. The team headed out to their stations with a bit more spring in their step than usual. It wasn't often that the workplace became the setting of a viral saga, and though the staff had handled it with grace, they also couldn't help but bask in the weird glow of collective infamy. Meanwhile, across town in a modest beige house nestled inside a gated suburban community, Karen sat at her kitchen table surrounded by crumpled tissues and a half-empty bottle of wine from the night before. The morning sun poured through the windows, but it offered no comfort. Her phone lay face down on the table, buzzing intermittently with texts she hadn't opened, calls she hadn't returned, and a flood of notifications from strangers she'd never met. She had attempted damage control the night before, posted a Facebook status claiming she had been harassed and baited, blamed the store for refusing to accommodate her, and accused staff of being aggressive and threatening. But her version of the story hadn't gained traction. Too many angles of the incident had emerged. Too many clear, unforgiving shots of her voice rising, of her purse smashing down on the helpless machine, of her shouting about robots and freedom, while employees tried to calm her. There was no way to spin it. The internet had seen, and the internet had judged. Karen's teenage daughter had locked herself in her room, refusing to come out since classmates had started tagging her in the video with laughing emojis. Her husband hadn't spoken much either. He'd come home, taken one look at the situation unfolding online, and retreated into his study. Karen had stayed up half the night replying to messages with long, furious explanations, arguing with strangers in the comments, and threatening legal action against anyone who mocked her. But nothing had stopped the momentum. She was a meme now, a cautionary tale, a digital scar that would never fully fade. Sitting at her table now, Karen stared blankly at the coupon still resting beside her coffee mug. She hadn't thrown it away. It had been flattened, ironed out, and carefully placed next to her laptop as if keeping it in sight might justify everything. But even she was beginning to feel the weight of its absurdity. 50 cents. That's all it had been. 50 cents, and a bruised ego spiraled into public humiliation, police involvement, a store ban, and the possible end of whatever fragile image she had maintained among her peers. Her neighborhood Facebook group had gone silent on her posts. Her church friends hadn't returned her calls. Even her Pilates instructor had quietly removed her from the group chat. Back at the store, Marcus finished helping a customer and turned to find Vanessa watching him with a raised eyebrow. "You okay handling the self-checkouts today?" she asked, a playful tone in her voice. He nodded, laughing. "Yeah, I think I can manage. If anything happens, I've got a new strategy." He held up a small sign he had written on a sticky note that read, "No purse slams allowed." Vanessa chuckled, shook her head, and walked off, leaving him to manage the line of customers with a confidence he hadn't had the day before. He wasn't just the nervous teen anymore. He was the guy who had survived the great coupon incident. That had to count for something. The day went on smoothly. Customers trickled through. People laughed quietly at the infamous sign. Some asked for the Marcus from the video, wanting a photo. Others just offered kind words or bought an extra candy bar in support. The store returned to its rhythm, altered only by the sense that something oddly historical had happened here, and that everyone who'd been present now shared an unspoken bond. As the sun set again, casting golden streaks across the store's polished floors, the remnants of Karen's meltdown faded into the background. The new printer worked flawlessly. The staff, once overwhelmed, had found levity in survival. The community, amused and slightly awed, had moved on to the next piece of viral chaos. Karen, in her now silent house, sat alone with the knowledge that she'd become part of a joke she didn't control and couldn't escape. But the story would end there. No lawsuits, no dramatic returns, just a name whispered occasionally in retail circles, a lesson about pride, temper, and the strange ways the modern world remembers everything. The machine had been broken. The coupon had expired, and in the end, the only thing truly damaged was her reputation.